Hey, what's new and exciting? It's Kevin O'Shaughnessy here, and today I'm going to talk about why you might be having trouble playing chords and what you can do about it. Now, before we get going, I'd like to let you know that right now I am offering a free download of my album Persistence of Vision. It's just my way of saying thank you for being a subscriber and for contributing to this community, and just a wish that everybody stays safe in these uncertain times. There's a link in the description below. You can learn all about the offer there. It's absolutely free, no strings attached. I hope you download it, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you let me know what you think. Now, without further ado, let's attack these chords. Basically, there are two reasons why you might be having trouble playing chords. One is your anatomy, your physical attributes. The other one is the position of the guitar and your hand on the guitar, all right? So basically, it's what you got and how you use it. It sounds kind of stupid when you put it that way, but it really is that simple. Let's take the second one first, positioning of the guitar on your lap. So if you sit like this in kind of a rock or folk style and you're having trouble playing chords, one of the first things that you might want to try is simply switching to a classical style of holding the guitar. Now, I'll be perfectly honest, I haven't gone through all of the ins and outs to figure out how exactly that changes the mechanical advantage of your fretting hand, but I have seen it both in myself and in my students who are having trouble with certain chords. They play it in that folk style and they can't get it to sound right. All of a sudden they turn the guitar up like this and the chord sings like they've never heard before. Now, of course, it may feel a little awkward at first and maybe it's not right for everything that you're playing, but it might be worth a try. So holding the guitar up like this, there is a subtle difference in the hand position that if you're more comfortable playing it in the folk style or the rock style, you might be able to transfer that feeling to this position, making the chords easier to play. Now, the position of the guitar on your lap may not be enough to get those chords to feel easy to play, in which case we have to look at how we're using our fingers on the fretboard. And in order to do that, we need to know a little bit about how those fingers move, okay? What kinds of motion are they capable of? So, like many of the other joints that we have in the body, we have extension, we have flexion. The fingers are also capable of hyperextension, meaning they can go past the neutral point, okay? Your elbow, for example, this is fully extended, and the only way you're going to go into hyperextension is if it gets broken. But the fingers can actually extend past the neutral line, and so we have hyperextension. So flexion, extension, hyperextension. We also have abduction, right, where we spread the fingers apart, and adduction, where we bring them together. And finally, not that it's terribly useful on the guitar, but we can also do circumduction, okay, which means we can draw circles with our fingers, much like we can with the shoulder joint. Now that you know a little bit about how the fingers move, we need to talk about how we might go about conditioning them to work more effectively on the fretboard, okay? Now, as I have said many times before, I'm a guitar player, not a physical therapist. I do believe the information that I give you is good and sound as it applies to playing guitar, but if when implementing it you start feeling a lot of pain, you can certainly hit me up with questions, but if it continues, definitely go see a doctor or a PT because they're going to be able to help you out a lot better than I will. But with that said, let's talk about conditioning the fingers a little bit. And actually, before we get into conditioning them so much, let's see what is happening when we play a C chord, okay? I picked the C chord because it was certainly the hardest chord for me to get. I mean, until I got to things like bar chords and stuff like that, the C chord was probably one of the hardest chords I ever had to learn how to play. And I found that most of my students have trouble with it as well. So we're gonna take a look at that chord. Now, one of the mistakes that I made when I was trying to play chords was I was always trying to keep my fingers, I don't know if you can see this, but perpendicular to the neck. For some reason, when I heard that you needed to keep your fingers straight, I always thought that meant perpendicular to the neck. And if you try to do this, this probably feels really uncomfortable. Now, in this position, with the guitar on the angle like I usually recommend, if I put my hand here at about the 7th or the 9th fret, that's exactly what happens. My fingers are perpendicular with the neck, and if I play that C shape in this position, I'm actually in the 10th position right here. So this is this would be a G chord, sort of, right? If I play that, my fingers are very much perpendicular to the neck at this point, and it feels perfectly comfortable, okay? Because my fingers are in line with my forearm. Now, I've mentioned this in another video, but as I start taking that shape down the neck, did you see what happened there? My fingers went from being perpendicular to the neck to being on an angle. My forearm rotated ever so slightly, and actually not even so slightly. It rotated a noticeable amount so that I could reach the frets that I needed to reach to play that chord well. So you might be looking at this asking, well, why is that? Why can't you keep your fingers straight? Well, you can, but I mentioned that the fingers are capable of abduction, which means they're able to stretch away from each other like this. But look how much further I get if I use a combination of hyperextension and flexion. Okay, this is a much bigger distance. And when I apply that to a guitar chord, I don't have to go as far. See, even just doing a 1 fret stretch between my first 2 fingers it's a little bit of work. I mean, I can actually do a 2 fret stretch, and that's a lot of work. But even a 1 fret stretch, and say that 5 times fast, even doing a 1 fret stretch here in the first position is kind of a lot, especially when if I'm trying to keep my fingers perpendicular to the neck. But by leaning them, I'm still keeping my fingers in line with my forearm. That's where they need to be straight. Not straight against the neck, per se, but straight along the line of your forearm. So they lean a little bit. See, now I can take advantage of that extension. I can extend that middle finger. I can extend that ring finger a little bit. And now I have a much more comfortable position. As I move, I don't want to make the opposite mistake of keeping these fingers on an angle like this when they don't need to be that way. So as I move from the low positions to the high positions, you'll notice that my forearm rotates my hand and the chords, or rather my fingers playing the chords, begin to get more perpendicular to the neck. So to look at this just a little further, what's really going on? Well, my first finger, when I play that C chord, this knuckle right here is in extension. Okay, I don't know if you can see this on the camera. I wish I had another camera. I could do some close-ups or something. But this is in extension, okay? And then notice how much it's flexed, right? The other 2 segments of my finger are flexed almost all the way in order to fret the C on the B string. Now, as I reach up to play this E on the D string here at the 2nd fret, this finger has a little bit more extension to it. And then my 3rd finger playing the C on the A string has even more extension to it. So the fingers are kind of fanned out a little bit, which makes the whole C chord feel much more comfortable. So one of the simplest exercises you can do to begin to achieve that level of comfort is essentially what I just did a minute or so ago, where I started up here at the 10th fret. It's the same voicing, and some of these chords are going to sound a little weird, but if I play here, where it's comfortable, I can get all the notes, everything fits really nicely, and I just start moving my fingers down 1 position at a time, strumming the chord, making sure that I get all of the notes right. See, there's a funky one. All the while, I'm sort of letting my fingers do their own work. I'm not trying to hold my wrist or my forearm or my hand in any one specific position. I'm letting them decide where they need to go so that they can get to the frets. And there we are. Now we can also do more straight up technical exercises as well. If you guys are familiar with walking exercise or spider exercises, for example, these were things that I was given in some of my first lessons where you're just walking up each position and then crossing strings. then a new position. Then you go back down. I like to refer to those as walking exercises because the fingers are doing basically the same thing that our legs do when we walk across a room. We're kind of walking across the frets. More on that maybe in a different video. But here's what you need to do. In order to get that exercise to work for this particular situation, we need to go backwards down one string like this. Notice the forearm rotation by the time I get down here to the first position. When I started out, I was perfectly perpendicular to the neck. My fingers were. As I moved, my forearm started to rotate out and my fingers began to extend. All right, this is what made it much more comfortable. As a matter of fact, there's a little shoulder abduction in there too, which I talked about in a previous video. So you see how the fingers begin to move along the neck. Okay, now from here, we can go down the strings. Notice as I was doing that exercise, my forearm was rotating again, making my hand more parallel to the neck. Not necessarily in this case making my fingers perpendicular to the fretboard, but the palm of my hand began to face more in an upward direction toward the neck. That's so the pinky can reach the sixth string with ease. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up with a bit of a finger stretching exercise, okay? The first one's very simple. We're just going to do trills, which in this case are going to be pretty slow, and a trill is just an alternation between two notes. In this case, I'm going to start up here at the 12th fret, and it's going to look something like this. Now that probably doesn't look like much of a stretch, but by the time you get down here to the first position, you are going to have to spread those fingers just a little bit. Or better yet, you'll start to feel the rotation in your forearm so that your fingers can take advantage of that flexion and extension we were talking about earlier. You can do this with all of your finger pairs or adjacent finger pairs, so 1 and 2, 2 and 3, and 3 and 4. And go all the way down from the 12th fret to the 1st fret and back again. The next one I'm going to recommend is you only do between your 1st and 2nd fingers and your 3rd and 4th fingers, because to do this stretch between your 2nd and 3rd isn't going to make much sense, and I'll explain why in a second. So this actually is a stretch, even down here at the 12th fret. You're going to alternate between the 12th fret and the 14th fret. So now it's a 2-fret span that you're working with your fingers. So here I am at the 10th fret, and you can already see that my forearm is starting to rotate to make those notes a little easier to play. That's okay. We want to get used to the forearm rotating a little bit so that the fingers can do what they need to do. They're a little bit better at this flexion extension thing than they are at abduction and adduction, okay? We still need to work that out a little bit, but it doesn't have to be these huge stretches, right? We can work them into our playing. Same thing, you start at the 12th fret, you go down to the 1st fret, you come all the way back up to the 12th fret. Now the one thing that I will say is be patient, okay? This is going to take a lot of time. If you were trying to start gymnastics and you were trying to do a full split and you have never been capable of doing it, you're not going to be able to do it overnight. It's probably going to take months. This might too, but you're going to feel certain things are going to get better relatively quickly, all right? You're going to see small improvements all the way along the line. So whatever you do, don't give up. keep at it. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please leave a comment below. If it wasn't quite what you're looking for, leave me a comment also. Let me know what your issue is so that I can address it in a future video. Until next time, go practice the guitar. I am Kevin O'Shaughnessy. I will see you in the next video.